very excited about this new chapter in my life, but it means I must step away from this role.
A tearful farewell to Georgia House colleagues by Representative Matt Dollar on his last day in the chamber before moving on to a position with the Technical College of Georgia. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this 9th day of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry. We'll have more on Representative Dollar's resignation a bit later. Among the legislation we'll talk about in this show, women's health, from reproductive health care to vaccine passports and maternal mortality. We have lawmakers joining us to discuss those issues. Also, there's a bipartisan effort to create an oversight committee to look at the distribution of the federal COVID relief money. Two of the sponsors of the bill will tell us more. But first, let's head to the Capitol and more on the day from Capitol correspondent Brenda Waters. A busy day there, Brenda.
Indeed it was, Donna. Today, is the first day of Black History Month. It's also the Lunar New Year. And with the Year of the Tiger now beginning, legislators have their claws out. Early this morning, during the Governmental Affairs Committee meeting, a substitute bill introduced by Representative Bonnie Rich passed out of committee, House Bill 873, but not without a fight from the Democrats.
Unfortunately, the Board of Commissioners chose to 100% ignore my input. Names have been called, allegations have been made. The words white power have been used. There's no evidence of that. They're just slinging and hurling slurs at me personally.
The bill would revise the district boundaries for the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners. Representative Park, who authored the original bill, has been an outspoken critic of Representative Rich and Republicans, arguing Republicans are intent on controlling the mapping process and replaced his district maps with their own.
What happened this morning, Representative Bonnie Rich and the Republican majority, they are taking unprecedented legislative steps to move a local redistricting bill as local legislation and treating it as general legislation. The map that they subbed, that was a map that was just published yesterday. The county commissioners do not support it. A majority of Gwinnett representatives do not support this map, and yet they are continuing to move forward after hijacking a bill that followed all the rules. There was no public input. Two, it creates a northern district that segregates the haves and the have-nots in Gwinnett County. From a socioeconomic perspective, which of course is not something normally considered in the redistricting process. But I think Representative Rich is skirting and playing with the rhetoric here, right? She's creating a disproportionately white district in Gwinnett County.
Representative Rich's version is now on the way to the House floor. House Bill 385 also passed in the House today. It helps put more teachers back in the classroom by bringing back retired educators. Teachers groups have wanted this for some time. Also in the House, Representative Matt Dollar was teary-eyed as he announced from the well that he is resigning his seat in the Georgia House of Representatives effective today.
Some time ago, I accepted a role with TCSG, the Technical College System of Georgia, working on economic development around our state. I'm very excited about this new chapter in my life, but it means I must step away from this role. I actually stayed longer than I planned, but I felt I needed to honor some commitments I made to people back home.
One of the things he was instrumental in doing for the people back home is House Bill 841. It passed, creating a ballot referendum for the residents of Cobb, allowing them to decide if they want to create the city of East Cobb. Representative Dollar also sponsors a referendum for two other cities, in Cobb, Lost Mountain, and Vinings.
Thank you, House, for being such an important part of my life.
Representative Dollar has been a member of the House since 2003. The governor has 10 days to call an election to fill his seat, which expires next January. Across the hall, the Senate unanimously passed the Giving the Gift of Life Act. The bill would protect living donors by prohibiting insurance companies from canceling or denying life insurance to those who donate vital organs like a liver or kidney. It also raises the tax credit for organ donation to $25,000 and provides a tax credit for businesses that support employee organ donations. This bill is on its way to the House. And Senator Sonia Halpern spoke on the floor today regarding the multiple bomb threats sent to more than a dozen historically black colleges and universities in the past few weeks. Senator Halpern says that rhetoric deriding higher education had a significant impact, with 40% in the country now believing that college learning is having a negative effect on the country. She says the two are related.
As these bomb threats have shown that rhetoric has real consequences, we have a responsibility to encourage debate, foster curiosity, teach critical thinking in our places of higher learning. The attacks, both literal and rhetorical, against our schools need to stop.
And outside the Capitol this morning, members of the United Campus Workers of Georgia gathered to press legislators for fair wages and raises. And last in my Capitol report, today was Girl Scout Day at the state Capitol. Visiting Girl Scouts got to see state government in action firsthand and to meet the state representatives and also take pictures with them. And Donna is our favorite Girl Scout leader.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you very much. Been doing it for 14 years. Thanks, Brenda. Well, the governor's Office of Planning and Budget reports that the state has received $4.12 billion from the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Just this afternoon, the governor announced where some of that money will go, and we'll look at that in a moment. First, we're going to talk now about a bipartisan bill that dropped today to create a legislative overview committee for those federal COVID dollars. And joining me are two of the authors of the legislation, Republican Representative Beth Camp of Concord in Pike County and Democratic Representative Marvin Lim of Norcross in Gwinnett County. Thank you both for being here. And so one of the keys to this bill is that you're joining across the aisle. I love that. And I want to know what led to this joint effort, Representative Camp.
Well, I think we were in session back in November, and Representative Lim brought me a letter that he had drafted, and the letter was to the governor asking for a little more transparency in where these funds were going. And it was interesting because after we kind of hashed it out, we realized that willingly, probably the governor wasn't going to just hand us over this information. He may have, we didn't ask. But we thought, legislatively, we had this opportunity to create an overview committee that was not only for this situation, but for any money that could come in the future. Unfortunately, during the recession, there was emergency funds that came in, the pandemic emergency funds. Heaven forbid something happens in the future, but historically, we know that's a good possibility. So we are being proactive. We both have a mutual interest in rural broadband or broadband. We live in broadband deserts currently, even though Representative Lim is in Gwinnett County, and I'm in rural Georgia, distant suburban Georgia. So understanding a little bit more where this money was going meant a lot to us. So I would say that we fine-tuned this bill. What do you think, Representative Lim?
It sounds good.
Yeah, I know Representative Camp and I spent pretty much all of 2021 trying to facilitate this funding, the CARES Act funding, as well as the American Rescue Plan Act funding, to go to our communities. We're on different sides of the aisle. We're on different sides of the rural-urban divide, but we both have very under-resourced communities. Yes. And these are unprecedented levels of fund. And as Representative Camp has mentioned, this is likely or certainly possible to happen in the future. So it's very understandable that the governor is dealing with a lot. So we're not seeking to necessarily have a hand in the decision-making, but to ensure that information is accessible to our local citizens and taxpayers who are paying into these funds.
Yeah, so the bill is called HB 1131, dropped today, calls for a special federal funds overview committee. And let's start with the parameters of that? How do you expect it to work?
Well, it's modeled after the One Georgia Overview Committee, which has been in existence for a few years. What happens is there'll be appointees. There'll be 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate, and 3 from the governor's office. So there'll be 9 members who are appointed by the leadership of each. And it'll give an opportunity just, for example, if Representative Lim was appointed to this committee, and I was curious about when something was going to come out about rural broadband awards. And instead of calling OPB and saying, hi, I wanted to call because there's 180 of us in the House and 56 in the Senate, realistically, it's going to be really challenging for the governor's office to answer all those phone calls and get anything done in the interim. So I could go to Representative Lim and say, I'm just curious, this entity in my community submitted an application, and I was just curious when it was going to come out, maybe the parameters of some of the programs that I don't fully understand, and then after the fact, why didn't we get the money? What was lacking in our application? So maybe we could be better next time.
Right, and there are a lot of applications coming in. Talk a little bit about that and the types of applications.
Yes, so for the American Rescue Plan, there was a funding, 3 buckets of funding. One was for negative economic impact, another was for broadband, the other was for water infrastructure projects. And there were tons of applications, certainly far more than can be funded. So with that, certainly creates competition, because even with all of this funding, it's not going to serve everyone's needs. So with the variety and volume of applications, that is something that certainly motivated this bill to, again, get that access to information. We are not changing, and we cannot change the amount of funds allocated. And again, this is not about having a hand in the decision making, but we can certainly get that information to our local residents. And ultimately, this is, to me, also about that local control, so that we can get that information to those really serving our communities.
Yeah, so Governor Kemp said last year that he'd like it to go to these major areas: broadband expansion, water and sewer projects, and help for those financially hurt by the pandemic. Of course, that last one's pretty broad. But today he announced that almost $408 million would, in preliminary awards for faster and more reliable broadband, will go to 70 Georgia counties. That has to be great news, and you knew about this before you came here. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's really exciting for me because in my district, we are majority internet desert. You know, it's really sad because during the pandemic, people were having to go to McDonald's to do telehealth. There were kids doing worksheets because they didn't have access to computers. So now we have this great opportunity because Upson County, which is in District 131, was awarded $4.4 million to their initiative with Wavecom to bring rural broadband to the rest of the county that's underserved. And Southern Rivers Energy, which is in my district, was awarded $15.6 million today. So it's a good day. It's a great opportunity to bring the internet to our area. So I'm really excited. Unfortunately, not everyone who applied in my district, Pike County, for example, which is my home county, did not receive their grant. So I would like to know why. So this is a great opportunity. What could we do better next time?
Yeah, what are your feelings about it?
I definitely agree with Representative Camp. I think an important point is that we're talking right now about CARES and ARPA, but there's also the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or otherwise known as the infrastructure bill, that will also bring significant dollars to Georgia. And so we're going to have more money to do the things that we really need to do in our communities. But even with that allocation from the federal government, we're still not going to be able to get all the funding we need. So that measure of, again, access to information, I was very fortunate. I did a lot of advocacy at the county level for the local fiscal recovery funds to get broadband. But even that, we got $5 million for my so-called qualified census tracts. That is only going to be a portion of what is needed. So this access to information is critical moving forward as well.
So the cutoff is what, $1 billion? So if something comes into the state over $1 billion is what you're thinking?
Yes, for formula funding, yes.
For formula funding. I'd be curious, I know I asked you earlier today if you'd talked to the governor's office about it. Tell me about that process.
Well, they were very gracious. We had an opportunity to sit down with a person from the governor's office and discuss this bill. They were not objectionable to the bill. We just explained it's a transparency Really, it's a win-win for the governor's office to give that layer of transparency. As Representative Lim said, we're not taking away any ability to distribute funds. It's not an oversight where we have input. It's just simply an overview. So it's a great opportunity for, I think, the citizens of Georgia to be able to see fully how the legislative process works, how funding works. Let them understand where the money goes. And I think if we kind of demystified some of that, I think we'd have more involvement from our citizens in active government.
Yeah, have you had questions from your constituents asking you about that money?
Yes, I've definitely had questions, particularly throughout this last process regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. And there was a lot of questions regarding not only the parameters of how it would be funded, but what would actually happen. Because even though these committees were appointed, again, to Representative Camp's point, this is very, particularly for the smaller providers, smaller nonprofits, this is a process that they're not used to. And again, it's a new process for all of us, but certainly I've had questions, and this is a step to ensuring that we are able to answer those questions for our constituents. Because again, I will emphasize that these are our taxpayers paying into these funds.
Okay, so what are you going to tell your constituents at this point who did not get this money with broadband?
Well, I think at this point it's just important to look at it and reevaluate to see if we'll be in the next round, to see what proactive steps can be taken. But again, I come from communities where the largest county has less than 30,000 people. So there's not a grant writer on staff. There's not a huge department of individuals who are just combing through every day trying to find every possible dollar. So this is big for this community, for any community that's small like mine. Pike County, where I live, the broadband's horrible. I had to make my husband get off a YouTube video last night so I could send a contract to someone. So just, it's a real life situation for people, and I'm going to do my best to try to figure out why and what we can do next time.
Okay, well, we'll hear more about it. The bad thing is the broadband won't be tomorrow, so you have to wait a little bit. Thank you both for being on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be right back with more Lawmakers in just a moment.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
We are the Southern Environmental Law Center. At SELC, we not only take on the toughest environmental challenges, we win, forcing the removal of more than 250 million tons of toxic coal ash, defeating repeated attempts to bring offshore drilling to our coasts, and securing clean air and water protections for communities across our region. Your most powerful environmental defender is rooted right here in the South.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. We're going to talk now about women's health issues and several bills attracting attention under the Gold Dome. Joining me are members of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, Democratic Senator Michelle Au of Johns Creek and Republican Senator Bo Hatchett of Cornelia. So thank you so much for being here. Let's start by talking about Senate Bill 351. It's called the Women's Right to Know Act. It would require anyone seeking abortion pills to visit a doctor before getting them. And so I want you, Senator Hatchett, to tell us a little bit more about that, because you're a sponsor on that bill, aren't you?
Yeah, I am a co-signer. The sponsor is Bruce Thompson, and I've had lengthy discussions with him about this, and this honestly goes back to 2005 when the Women's Right to Know Act was passed. Obviously, technology has changed, prescriptions have changed, the way that the medical community does things has changed since 2005. And what this is honestly a way to make sure that women in the state of Georgia are protected. And we care about women in the state of Georgia. And one of the things that they need to be protected from is, right now, if I want a Z-Pak, I have to get a prescription from a doctor. I can't just go online and order it. And that's just an antibiotic. Well, here with the pills that can initiate an abortion, they're dangerous. There have been cases where women have died from taking these pills. So what we're saying is if you have risks that may cause that, you need to talk to a doctor. A doctor needs to be involved for a multitude of reasons. And what this bill does is to assure that physicians are the gatekeeper, they are the medical experts, and that you are not able to obtain these pills without a prescription from a physician and going through the process that a physician recommends.
Yeah, one of the things that's happened new is that the FDA last year began allowing the pills to be sold through the mail. Is that what makes this more of an issue now than it was possibly last year at this time?
Well, one of the reasons why we think that may or may not have occurred, and after talking to Senator Thompson today, was that may have been in response to the heartbeat bills and bills that were being passed across the country as a way to make sure women, or just in response to that. And this bill is, like I said, designed to protect women, and that's the intent of the author, and I think his heart's in the right place.
All right. Senator Al, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that this bill, Senate bill, which number is it again? 372?
Right, I think 351.
351, that's correct. There's so many of them. Is just another in a series of bills introduced in Georgia that seek to further restrict women's freedoms and further restrict access to reproductive health care. So a couple things I want to push back on with respect to what Senator Hatchett said. And I first want to say I really enjoy working with Senator Hatchett. He is my seatmate.
I was going to say, you sit next to each other.
He is my seatmate.
So you've gotten to know each other.
He is a smart guy. He is a good guy, and I really enjoy working with him. And he gives me a lot of good advice. So with respect to this bill and its restrictions on medical abortion, first of all, it does not mean that you can, currently you cannot get these bills, mifepristone and misoprostol, without a prescription. What is currently at play is that there's ways to visit a physician and get that prescription with telehealth access and to have it mailed through the mail for women to access, right? So it is still being prescribed by a physician, and these medications are actually incredibly safe. What I want to say is that a lot of times these types of bills are framed as ways to protect women, sort of like a paternalistic sense of women needing protection from the evils or the harms of abortion. However, what research has shown is that abortion, legal abortion, under the care of a physician, is actually incredibly safe and is actually 14 times safer than pregnancy, labor, and delivery. So these problems that we see with this bill, I'm going to bring up a couple. First is that it subjects medical providers to criminal penalties for not practicing medicine under the auspices of this bill. And some of the things that it penalizes doctors for is not using language around the ability to reverse medical abortions, which is actually not scientifically sound. So this is actually, I would say it's state-sanctioned malpractice, that it forces doctors to use this type of language that is not borne out in science. The second thing is that it provides excessively onerous restrictions and requirements for both reporting and for consent of patients. So one of the things I will bring up is that it requires a physician to see a patient 24 hours before any abortion procedures are provided, get a signed consent, and not do anything for the patient until 24 hours after this consent is obtained. And this bill specifically cites ectopic pregnancy as one of the conditions that fall under the umbrella of this bill. An ectopic pregnancy is a medical emergency. That patient is rushing to the ER immediately when we see that patient in the ER. So building in something in legislation that forces that patient to have to wait 24 hours before any care can be undertaken is malpractice.
I gotta get your response.
Well, one of the things I want to touch on in a conversation that I actually had today was the reversal of abortion, which you're talking about. Obviously, with surgery, it's not possible. But there have been cases with these where if a woman does change her mind within a 48-hour period, there are drugs that you can take that actually do reverse the effects of the initial pill that you take. And so There apparently were 2 in Georgia recently that were reversed, and healthy babies were born as a result of that reversal. And so I wanted to address that specifically.
Okay. I know that we could go back and forth with this a lot, but I want to get into some other issues while I have you both here. And one is a bill that you have, talk about 2 bills to prohibit vaccine passports. You're a signer on one of them. There's SB 372 prohibits discriminating against someone who doesn't have a passport. And then the other one deals with preventing governments from mandating passports for vaccine passports. Your thoughts on why you want those bills?
Well, the good thing about these bills and when they're introduced is there's a committee process, there's a vetting process, and I want to commend Senator Al. I'm not a medical doctor or in the healthcare industry. I'm an attorney, and so we do bounce a lot of ideas back and forth. And I think there is civil discourse in the state legislature, at least on the Senate side. I'm just kidding. But as far as the vaccine passports go, we have a lot of constituents in my district that, for whatever reason, do not want to have or take the vaccine. And we have people that may think it's no one's business whether or not they've been vaccinated. And this is specifically, the calls that I'm getting are specifically referring to the COVID-19 vaccine. And so, we don't think it's in this case, especially with the COVID-19 vaccine, that vaccine passports should prevent someone from gaining access to, going to get a driver's license or a marriage license or, as the Supreme Court said, as a requirement for gainful employment.
Okay, Senator Al, I want to talk to you. You're a physician, you're an anesthesiologist. Your thoughts?
So 2 separate thoughts here. One is I really also want to compliment Senator Hatchett for really being someone who works well with others and also is able to communicate about political issues with great nuance. And I think that's something that's really missing in political discourse, generally speaking. And I think that a lot of issues that we deal with are not black and white. So with respect to these 2 vaccine bills, the first one that I want to talk about is 345, Senate Bill 345. This one is sort of more of a pan-vaccine ban. How it was written and how it was dropped actually bans all required vaccines from really including not just COVID, but all vaccines as a requirement for example, school enrollment. So this, I think, is it's a pretty big step, and I think it's frankly a little bit ludicrous, especially in this moment, to introduce legislation that undermines people's confidence in the safety and efficacy of vaccines, okay? That's the first bill. I'm just going to put that to the side. The second one actually has to deal a little bit more with the sort of COVID vaccine restrictions that Senator Hatchett was discussing. One concern I have with this bill, Senate Bill 372, is it actually has explicit language that prohibits healthcare entities like hospitals from requiring vaccines as a condition of employment for its employees. This is a problem, okay? I think that as a healthcare practitioner and as a patient in the past, patients have a reasonable expectation that people who work in hospitals and the healthcare workers who take care of them have taken all reasonable precautions to prevent them from preventable illness. So preventing hospitals from requiring this of their employees is a big problem.
Yeah. So I loved having both of you on here. I wish I had the entire show because we are now out of time, and there's so much that we could have talked about. So thank you both for being here. Maybe we can continue this discussion another time. And thank you for joining us tonight on Lawmakers. You can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter at GPB News using the hashtag GPB Lawmakers. And also don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. on your GPB station for Political Rewind hosted by Bill Nigut. And we'll see you tomorrow for Legislative Day 10. Have a good night.
Thank you.